Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to show you how I painted this moon.
That's not a moon!
Something Star Wars reference? Anyway, I'm going to show you how I painted this 2.7 millionth scale model of the second Death Star. This is a Bandai kit that I built a while ago. If you'd like to see the build video, there's a link in the description below. I'm not going to sit here and wait for you to watch it, but if you make use of the pause function, it'll be just like I'm waiting for you. Let's get right into putting some paint on some plastic. The first thing I did was prime, with a black primer. You can see that I'm not using the clear plastic stand this thing came with, and I did try using it, all masked up and everything, but it wasn't very good and it moved around a bit too much. The solution was to blue tack an old paintbrush handle into the mounting hole, simple enough. I airbrush on a base coat of Vallejo Model Color German Grey. It is kind of hard to see against the black, but it is going on, and I did a fairly consistent coat of this all over the model. I follow that with what I think is Model Color Basalt Grey. I kind of lost the notes I made when I painted this part. It's either Basalt Grey or London Grey. They're very similar to each other, and in the grand scheme of things it's really not that important. Next, I apply Model Color Sky Grey, in much the same way as the previous colour. It's worth noting that I'm not spraying directly into the open middle parts of the model. I want that to stay dark. Also, this isn't a totally opaque layer. That would make the previous colours redundant, and we wouldn't want that, would we? They did end up kind of being a bit redundant. What I mean is I painted over most of this later on. Anyway, for now, I applied a wash of army painted dark tone, mixed roughly 50-50 with water, and applied all over the model, as you do. The important part of this step, I would say, is to darken down the interior sections, which I do want to be nice and dark. I feel like that just makes sense. Now it's time for a little bit of dry brushing. I did this in more layers than I really needed to do, starting with Model Color Sky Grey, and I'm just doing this all over the model. You don't really need to do this in a particular direction. I mean, we're not going for any streaky looks or anything, and this makeup brush is really nice for avoiding streaks. Once that was on, I did the same thing with Vallejo Model Color Pale Grey Blue, which, as the name kind of suggests, has a sort of bluish hue to it. And you do often see a sort of bluish colour to this sort of thing, so that's why I went with it. I was pretty happy with that, but I decided to go a tiny bit further and mix a little bit of Model Air white into the pale grey blue, and then, unsurprisingly, I applied it in pretty much exactly the same way, just a bit lighter. Here's the thing though, this is a little bit redundant. It looks good, but up until this point, I was kind of just painting this thing from memory. I decided to pay a bit more attention to some reference images, just to see what I could do, and this made me think, maybe I could do things a little bit differently here. You see on the real prop that a lot of the panels are a bit darker than the gaps around the panels, I guess you'd say. What I'd done here doesn't really look like that. It would be easy just to leave this how it is, and say,
well, it all looks like one colour from millions of kilometres away.
And that would be fine. Somebody would piss and moan about it, but it would be fine. I decided to do things the slightly less easy way.
You mean the hard way, Herbert?
Well, it's not really hard, it is just slightly more difficult. I painted some of the panels. Most of them, but not all of them. First, I used Vallejo Model Air Sea Grey, and I picked out various panels at random. It is a little bit fiddly, and kind of time consuming, but I hoped it would be worth the effort, so I bravely pressed on. I figured it probably wouldn't look the best if I just painted all of the panels the same colour, so I did a few more panels with By Mig rubber tyres. It is a bit more of a browny sort of grey, and it does stand out a bit more than the sea grey, but not in a bad way. I applied a little bit less of this than the sea grey. 2 colours is not enough. Well, it might be, but I wanted 3. So I used Model Color Basalt Grey. I applied this to about as many panels as the previous colour. It does look kind of close to the sea grey, but it's different enough that you can tell them apart. So this is why I said it was a bit redundant to do all of that airbrushing and dry brushing earlier on. Not that it was actually all that much work, they are both quick and simple things to do. I wasn't totally sure what I was doing.
Say it ain't so, Herbert.
But that is one of the things I like about painting, trying stuff out. It doesn't have to work out, but if I didn't try it, I wouldn't know if it worked, and if it did work, if I would like it. Anyway, what I've got here is alright. It definitely looks a lot more panelly than it did before. It is a little bit rough looking, but that's okay. It should look better after some dry brushing, which, as you can probably see, I'm doing here. I'm using Vallejo Model Color Pale Grey Blue again, because it's a good colour, because I think it works well here. What's happening is the dry brush is kind of fading the panel colours and blending everything together to give it a bit more of a unified look. It also hits the edges of the panels a little bit more than the middle of them, which gives the edges a lighter colour, which not only helps to tidy up those edges, but it also makes it look a bit more like how the movie prop does, which is what I'm going for. I'm sure some Star Wars nerd is going to get all diaper demolished because it's not a perfect replica of what you see on the screen, but I think it's a pretty decent representation without spending hours and hours painting. It's at this point that I'd usually apply some matte varnish, but really it's already matte enough, and it's not a gaming piece, and I don't plan on handling this, so it should be fine as is. So, the Star Wars Death Star 2 in 2.7 millionth scale by Bandai is now completed. I'm pretty happy with the result I've got here, and I'm glad I went to the effort of painting the panels instead of just saying
Good enough,
and leaving it as one colour. It certainly looks a lot more interesting at least. Obviously I didn't really plan at all when I started this, and if I were to do it again, I would skip over a lot of the initial airbrushing and dry brushing I did, and just paint the various panels. I would save minutes. I started painting this from memory, and looking at reference images halfway through made me change my mind. Some of you might think that's a bad thing, and good for you I guess, but sometimes painting is an adventure into the unknown, or at least the slightly unfamiliar. It's fun, and it's a hobby, so it should be fun, and it's okay to change your mind partway through or just do something totally different.
No, Herbert, only serious angry man business.
Oh, yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, this was a pretty simple, fun little thing to paint, and I'm pretty happy with it. If you're painting one of these and you like the colours I've used, I've put a list of the paints I've used in the description below. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you've painted one of these or any other cool models and you'd like to share, why not drop by our friendly Discord community and share some pictures? We'd love to see what you've done. And if you've not already done so, why not subscribe here on YouTube for the low price of $0.00. It makes sense. Ha 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 ha. Or maybe if you've got the means, and you want to help Erpaderp do Erpaderp things, and see my videos and hear my not at all terrible jokes a bit early, before there are ads, consider becoming a patron. You can find links to Patreon and all of my other things like Discord and social media in the description below. And, as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, have a fantastic day, and thanks for watching. Farewell.